All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're opening up a very different kind of playbook. We're looking at a pretty provocative and, let's be honest, controversial philosophy on the psychology of seduction. Now, this isn't your typical dating advice. The source material we're pulling from today presents this whole thing as a stark, almost cautionary guide. The argument it makes is that understanding this psychological framework, well, it isn't just an advantage, it's an absolute necessity.
And the source material doesn't waste any time. It comes right out of the gate with this really bold, really alarming claim. It says that modern men are failing because they don't understand the game. And this failure isn't just about being lonely. It leads directly to being, and I'm quoting here, used, manipulated, and discarded. So right away, this isn't framed as just, a simple dating miss. It's presented as a high-stakes issue of power, of self-respect, and of psychological survival.
So that's a pretty heavy diagnosis, right? The natural next question is, well, why? According to this philosophy, why is this actually happening? And the answer it provides has nothing to do with what you might think. It's not about your looks. It's not about how much money you have. The root cause, it argues, is a fundamental, almost tragic error in psychological approach.
And here is that core issue, framed as a psychological disconnect. On one side, you have what the source calls the failing male approach. It's described as direct, logical, and worst of all, predictable. A plus B equals C. But this, it argues, clashes completely with what it defines as a female psychology that operates on a totally different wavelength, one that's emotional, sometimes contradictory, and absolutely craves a sense of mystery. It's like trying to use a math textbook to understand a poem. The logic just doesn't apply. And according to this text, that predictability, that very logical approach, is the #1 killer of the emotional spark that creates real attraction.
So what happens when these two different languages collide? Well, this disconnect has very real consequences. The source warns that if you don't understand the psychological game being played, your role can become purely utilitarian. You become a tool. Maybe you're the emotional outlet, the guy she calls to vent to. Or the walking wallet, good for a nice dinner. Or maybe just a temporary distraction to pass the time. And the text argues this isn't always some malicious plot, it's just the natural, unfortunate outcome of the dynamic. Ignorance of the game, it claims, doesn't make you an innocent bystander. It makes you a pawn in it.
So, the obvious question is, how do you stop being a pawn? The source lays out 4 specific laws to follow. So let's dive into the first one. Law 1, master suspense. This is all about making a conscious shift from being that predictable, open book to becoming a source of genuine intrigue. The psychological engine behind this law is something called the zygarnic effect, and it's fascinating. Our brains are hardwired to hate unfinished business. Think about it. When a movie ends on a cliffhanger, you can't stop thinking about it, right? That's the zygarnic effect. An interrupted story, an unfinished task, it creates what psychologists call an open loop in our minds that we desperately want to close. The source argues you can apply this directly to human interaction. By leaving some questions unanswered or ending a really great conversation just a little bit early, you intentionally create that open loop. And what happens? They go home and they can't stop thinking about you because their brain is subconsciously trying to find that completion.
For a historical example of this, the source points to the legendary story of Cleopatra and Caesar. I mean, just picture this scene. Caesar is the most powerful man in the world. He's expecting some standard, boring diplomatic meeting. Instead, a carpet is unrolled at his feet, and out comes the Queen of Egypt. It was pure theater. It was completely unpredictable. By shattering his expectations in such a dramatic way, she created shock, she created curiosity, she instantly seized his imagination. The result wasn't just mild interest. The text says he was utterly captivated. That's the power of mastering a first impression through suspense.
So how do you actually do this today? The advice is surprisingly practical. First, mix up your routine. If you always text back in 2 minutes, wait an hour sometimes. If you always go to the same bar, suggest something completely different. Avoid being predictable. Second, become a better storyteller. Don't just give the whole story at once. Share it with cliffhangers. Say something like, "You won't believe what happened next, but I'll save that for next time." You're creating anticipation. And finally, embrace playful unpredictability. A sudden inside joke, a spontaneous idea for a date. You want to keep the interaction dynamic, always making them wonder, in a good way, what on earth is he going to do next?
Okay, so the second law builds directly on this foundation of intrigue. It shifts the focus from what you do to how you are perceived. Law 2 is, be the object of desire.
This law is grounded in a very real and very powerful psychological phenomenon called mate choice copying. You see this everywhere in nature and in human society. It's basically a form of social proof.
A person's attractiveness skyrockets when they are already desired by other people. Think about it. If you see a restaurant with a huge line outside, what do you automatically assume? That the food must be great, right? It's a mental shortcut. The source claims the same logic applies here. If other people, friends, colleagues, other women, clearly value your company, it sends a powerful signal that you are high value. It's like others have already vetted you, so you must be worth pursuing.
And this brilliant quote from Marcel Proust really captures the other side of this law perfectly, the power of scarcity. The source directly links desirability to your availability. If you're always available, always free, always waiting by the phone, your time isn't perceived as valuable. But by being hard to find, and this is key, not by playing games, but by actually having your own passions, your own goals, your own full social life, you automatically frame your time and your attention as precious resources that have to be earned, not just given away.
Now, the source is very clear on this. This has to be authentic. This is not about faking a busy life on social media. It's about actually building a full and interesting life for yourself. Let people see you thriving with your friends. When you're in a group, don't just focus all your energy on one person. Balance your attention. Engage with everyone. This shows social competence. It shows you're not desperate. And finally, let your passions and your strengths come out naturally in conversation. You're not bragging, you're not trying to impress, you are simply living a life that is impressive on its own, and you're allowing her to get a glimpse of it.
All right, Law 3. This is where we move from the mental and the social game into the sensory realm. It's about building anticipation and evoking feeling on a much more primal level. Law 3, create temptation. The psychological principle here is absolutely fascinating. It's called misattribution of arousal. The classic experiment that proved this is the bridge study. Researchers had men walk across two different bridges. One was a low, stable, safe bridge, and the other was a high, wobbly, terrifying suspension bridge. At the end of each bridge, an attractive woman met them and gave them her number. And guess what? The men who walked across the scary bridge were way more likely to call her later. Why? Because their brains mistook the adrenaline-fueled arousal from the fear of the bridge for intense romantic attraction to her. The source suggests you can harness this, create moments of fun excitement, go on a roller coaster, see a scary movie, go to a loud concert. You're trying to heighten the emotions that get associated with being with you.
The source holds up Casinosa as an absolute master of this, and it wasn't about showing off his wealth. His famous decadent feasts were designed to engage all the senses, to lower inhibitions and heighten pleasure. The philosophy is captured in this quote, "After the first sampling of something sinful, it becomes much easier to sin again." He was creating an immersive, tempting experience. Fine wine, rich desserts, beautiful music, scented candles, all of these little details worked together to make the interaction feel alluring, memorable, and just a little bit forbidden.
So the practical steps here are all about directing the experience, almost like a film director. First, engage the senses. Think about the lighting, the music, the smells of where you are. Is it appealing? Next, it suggests easing in with a slow buildup of gentle, non-rushed physical touch to create anticipation. A light touch on the arm, the hand. But crucially, you have to be fully present. Your phone should be away. Your attention should be 100% on them. Distraction is the absolute enemy of temptation. And finally, remember the bridge study. You want to mix in those moments of fun, excitement, or adrenaline to elevate the emotional stakes and make the time you spend together unforgettable.
And that brings us to the final law. And according to this text, it's perhaps the most powerful one of all, because it taps directly into the human desire for romance and meaning. Law 4, weave the fantasy.
This law is all about understanding and tapping into the power of romantic infatuation. You know that initial phase of a relationship, the honeymoon period, where everything feels perfect and you see the other person as this idealized version of themselves? The source argues that most people accidentally shatter this illusion with boring, mundane reality. The trick, it says, is to gently and playfully encourage it. Let them project that fantasy onto you. Embody the qualities of that ideal, making the other person feel like they've finally found someone truly rare, truly unique, someone they've been waiting for.
This anecdote about Casanova, again, is just a perfect illustration of what it means to create an enchanting world. He filled his private rooms with mirrors and candlelight. Now, you might think that's about his own vanity, but the source says it was a strategic choice. The mirrors weren't for him, they allowed his lover to see herself, bathed in soft candlelight, looking beautiful. It made her the star of the romantic scene he had so carefully created. He didn't just tell her she was desired, he created an entire experience where she could see and feel it for herself, making her the center of the fantasy.
So, applying this today means creating these kinds of magical moments. Cultivate thoughtful, personal romance. It's not about expensive, grand gestures. It's about remembering a tiny detail they mentioned weeks ago and bringing it up. Reveal intriguing layers of your character over time, not all at once, to maintain that sense of mystery. Embrace playful, clever flirtation that hints at a deeper connection. And, of course, master the art of the well-timed surprise. A perfect gesture at the perfect moment can feel like fate, reinforcing that fantasy that your connection is something truly special, something written in the stars.
So, after laying out these 4 intricate psychological laws, the source material brings us to its final and very stark conclusion. It calls this the final choice. And this really is the ultimate ultimatum that's presented. It's a binary choice. There is no middle ground. The philosophy is that attraction operates on these deep psychological principles, whether you are aware of them or not. Therefore, ignorance isn't bliss. According to this text, it is powerlessness. Not understanding the game makes you a piece that gets moved around by other players. But learning the rules, that means you can finally take control of the board. It's a direct, uncompromising, and deeply cautionary final word.
And so, this entire explainer leaves us with this one final, provocative question. It reframes this whole topic not as just a series of actions, but as a game in which every single person has a role, whether they know it or not. So after exploring this psychological playbook, the source forces a moment of pretty intense reflection. Are you going to be a conscious player, someone who understands the rules, or will you remain an unconscious piece, moved by forces you don't understand? It's a challenging question, and it's designed to make you think very, very deeply about the hidden dynamics of human connection.